Chapter 45. Ruin and Devastation. Short time after the Halloween celebration, it didn't seem like it was autumn. The days were still grayish and dark, the sun still didn't rise. The trees didn't have that reddish color in their leaves, but rather they were turning purple, blue and moss green. Others had been left without leaves and looked cadaverous. On the morning of November 17, 2012, the boys at the ranch were preparing to send Katie to the great cathedral to obtain the final deities of Omega and Baphomet. They already had in their possession the 12 medallions for the destruction of the dark deities, in addition to the success in betting by Alessio, Tony, Bastian, Maud and Oscar in the amusement park winning the million rods that they would need for the offering. That morning, Gavin would offer to go with her. Katie was very happy that he accompanied her, since they had not shared a walk together for a long time as happened in the first days they met. They both left the ranch towards the great cathedral, walking with their hoods through the Green Hills neighborhood, trying to avoid the sentinels who were still hanging around the other homes. They were no longer in their homes, but they were guarding everywhere, since the witches' new measures had dictated hunting down the rebels. Zeppelins and drones in surveillance mode could be heard in the skies. When they were very close to reaching the great cathedral, Gavin asked Katie a question. "Did you know that we could have come through the lamp?" "Ha. Yes, I know. We'll go back there. I just wanted to go out and breathe fresh air with my friend. I really needed to walk and talk to someone," said Katie. "Yes, you're right. I was going to say the same thing," said Gavin. "Really? Did you really miss going for a walk with me?" Katie asked. "Yes, talking to you is always very gratifying. It's like a place of peace, it feels good. Plus your hugs are magical," Gavin responded while his cheeks blushed. "I appreciate you saying that. I hope we can keep walking after all this happens," said Katie. "Rest assured, when this is over, we will go to the hill to see the sunset over the town. I promise you." "For the promise of the little finger," Gavin said and raised his hand with his right little finger. "Deal," Katie responded as she winked at him and put her pinky finger next to her friend's. Upon arriving at the great cathedral, Gavin asked Katie where they would go first. The crypt or the purgatory chapel, so she told him to go to the crypt first. They entered the interior of the great cathedral in the morning. They went down the stairs through the baptismal pool and arrived at the crypt. There Gavin placed the 12 medallions around the sanctuary of Baphomet. When this happened, the 12 medallions began to shine like pieces of glowing coal. "Now what's next?" Gavin asked. "Now I must deliver of the offering with a few words," Katie mentioned. She stood in front of the altar and began to say, "Edicessin et odnok etrikovni redop arap saradop sut sugertna." Muka rap adnerfo at si radnerbe odin fa, nesa usa si eniratok erodikovni al yos, rogpleb lani f lazel c dottie dnarg ho. Gavin noticed that she was speaking in a strange language. And minutes later he remembered that Katie was speaking in the Mo language. When she finished saying the phrase, the 12 medallions lit up like candles. And from the altar a great flame he came out and prostrated himself on top of them. Katie raised her right hand and the flame was placed in the palm of her hand. The invocation of Baphomet was already on her side. "Let's go get Omega," Katie said to Gavin and he followed her. They went up the steps and reached the purgatory chapel. There was the altar of Omega. Gavin took out of his pocket the million rods that the invocation required as an offering, and all the silver coins and gold were deposited. When this happened, 2 huge candles were lit that were next to a gold box on the altar. Katie again said a few words in Mo language in front of the gold box. It opened, Inside was a sphere of white light, similar to the moon but the size of an acetate disc. The sphere approached Katie and she raised her left hand and placed it on her. The invocation of Omega was already with the group of heroes. Time to get back to the ranch, Gavin, we have a battle to win, Katie told him, and they both left the chapel to return to the lamp that would take them to the ranch. Once they arrived at the ranch, they noticed that there was no one in the common room or the meeting room. Everyone was gathered on the terrace. What's happening? Gavin asked. Look what's in the sky, said Angie. What the hell is that? Tony asked. It looks like a human figure, said Roger. At that, Sylvia came out from among the people and went up to the tower where she had placed her telescope and observed the figure in the sky. It's Sylvanisha. Sylvia shouted. What? Really? And what is she doing? Black asked. It's like she's furious. Her eyes are blank. And now, said Sylvia as she was left speechless. She's doing what? Lewis asked. What's wrong, Sylvia? Reply. Tell us something, said Adrienne. She is raising her hands towards the sky. It is as if she was going to do something, said Sylvia. While this was happening, Alessio shouted, Get down. Everyone began to shake strongly in the ranch. After the strong tremor, the boys began to look at the sky where it was turning crimson, and a cry of pain, contempt, hatred and fury began to be heard through the whole atmosphere, so loud that everyone was still on the ground with their ears covered. It's the fury of Sylvanisha, Angie said. But what's wrong with him? Asked Chaka and Emily. In my opinion, I think she has found out that the evil transmission towers, her dark deities, were destroyed, and also Gavin and Katie just obtained the last 2 summons, something she wanted. She knows that these 2 blows that we have given her have been very strong for her. Now she is in a process of fury that will not stop, said Marycross. What is she supposed to do? Asked Alvord. We don't know, said Naomi. We will have to wait for all this to happen, said Priscilla. Sylvanisha in the sky continued screaming at the top of her lungs, and while this was happening, the sky began to turn more crimson. The sun made its appearance and suddenly the moon in the same way. The cosmic dance began between the celestial bodies in the sky. The moon began to form an annular eclipse of the sun, where a ring of fire could be seen in the sky. The planets were lining up, Sylvia reported from the tower while she watched with her telescope where Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn and Uranus were setting. Online, the 5 bright stars were under the ring of fire. After this, the trees around the town that could be seen from the terrace began to dry and some of them began to fall. The strong hurricane winds began to hit the ranch and everyone clung to the railings of the terrace. Yasser and Esther, who were in the common room, came to inform the boys about what was happening in the Great Bay. The tide had risen 20 meters, the beach town was going to the bottom of the sea. The island and the tail of the whale had disappeared, and in the distance a tsunami of 100-meter wave could be seen that was about to impact what was left of the town. The Pizcet River increased its flow and began to flow out to cause a flood in its surroundings. The homes that were around the river were destroyed. Everything became cloudy black. It began to rain with an electrical storm and lightning struck every 10 seconds. The volcano of fire began to erupt. Lava began to create a river and landslides on the slopes of Death Mountain, falling on nearby towns, and from the sky. Sylvia reported that meteorites were approaching and were about to hit the sky. Town, incandescent rocks began to fall from the sky, which joined with the rocks and ash that the fire volcano threw. She initiated the destruction of City Hall, the amusement park, the Antoska Clinic, the Green Hills neighborhood, Mackenzie Tower, the Lunesk station, all buildings in general. Sylvanetia finished screaming, lowered her arms and raised them again. A group of spheres of light began to rise to where she was. What is that? Look. They seem like little lights that go up to where Sylvanetia is, said Mariah. They are souls of people, said Katie. Look at the TV. The people on the news disappeared. It's as if they had evaporated, said Alessio. Sylvanetia has supplied the soul of all the Eschenite people in the town. Killing them to obtain their soul, she has become stronger, said Marycross. The disasters kept appearing. The water in the taps had disappeared. The drought was beginning. They had accidents and fires in different areas. In the distance, waterspouts and cyclones were forming. A high-category hurricane was about to reach the Great Bay. On Death Mountain it was seen how there were avalanches of the snow that is in those places, and the heat was increasing to about 42 degrees. The minions of the catacombs revived and came to the surface. Gavin went up to the tower where Sylvia was, and she began to explain to Gavin one of the reasons why this was happening. The planets make a certain conjunction, depending on the seasons, but if all of them align, what we see now happens, that all the phenomena of the 4 seasons are coming together. Normally Venus is visible only in winter, Mars is visible in summer, Jupiter in the transition from autumn to summer, as happens here in Pizcet, and the others are visible very rarely. Annular eclipses occur every 40 years, and the cycle of the last one has not even been completed. This is serious, explained Sylvia while this was happening. A magnitude 8 earthquake shook the ranch again. Sylvanetia in the sky raised her hands again, and the red sphere that had been surrounding the school since the end of August when the Fudblaze tournament ended began to rise. Rhoda was destroyed. Turning into rocks and rubble, the great saku tree fell in flames from the height of the platform where what was left of the college was hanging. The walls and buildings that they had began to form black Gothic walls, and below the platform a river of lava began to come out. Rhoda became an evil empire in the sky. Sylvanetia stopped and went down to her empire. All the creatures and minions guarded it, falling on the town like new sentinels. So, what does all this mean? Liza asked. It is ruin and devastation. The prophecy is advancing. It is being fulfilled. We must act, said Katie. What will we do now? Asked Chaka. Get ready for the final battle, Angie said. As everyone looked towards the horizon, looking at the dark empire of Sylvanetia in the skies.